guest alone, and not those of Vic Canellis Media Group, its parent, affiliates, or stations. VCMG Live is not responsible for any content, information, or opinions expressed. User bears full responsibility for their reliance on such content, information, or opinions.
Welcome to Ask the Experts radio show, proudly sponsored by board-certified family law attorney Tina Lewert of Lewert Law, LLC. Sit back for the next half hour as host Steve-O interviews top experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Steve-O offers such educational topics as community association law, family law, chiropractic care, employment law, healthcare law, and public insurance adjusting. Interviews by top experts in their field. And now, here's your host, Steve-O.
Hello, South Florida. Another Ask the Expert show. We're with you every Thursday night from 6 to 7. We have the top law firms in the country with us. And I got to tell you, this is the first Thursday of the month. And you all wrote how much you loved this show. I think a lot of them were related to Robert K. with K. Bender Rimbaum, but that's okay. But we found a time because people said, can't you give us more of your show? And we did. So now K. Bender Rimbaum is with us the first Thursday and the last Thursday from 6 to 7. Let me introduce you. He doesn't really need an introduction to the senior partner, board certified attorney Robert K. of K. Bender Rimbaum.
Good evening, everybody.
People love your show. So
well, I'm happy to do it.
We launched the new show with your partner, Michael Bender, and I got to tell you, we got like 5 or 6 phone calls. That's amazing for the first time.
Nice.
But everybody loves you, Robert. Anyway, so we've got so much to go over tonight. But since we always seem like we get new people finding the show, tell everybody about K. Bender Rimbaum.
K. Bender Rimbaum, as you've indicated, focuses in the area of community association law. Currently out of 3 offices, Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, and Tampa. We have a large number of board-certified specialists in the field in all of our offices, and we provide the day-to-day, every legal need that a community association would have, be it reviewing their documents, providing opinions as to rights and responsibilities, doing demand letters for enforcement issues, pursuing enforcement through litigation, contract negotiation, construction defect issues, complex litigation issues involving developer claims, as well as major construction issues, collection of unpaid assessments, all the types of things that associations address on a day-to-day basis is the services we provide.
You guys wear a lot of different hats, but
we do.
And you know what? And I know I'm going to tell people this because I know for a fact how important customer service is to you.
Oh, absolutely. We know we're in a service business, and clients definitely need to hear from us when they need to hear from us and not to be wondering what happened to their lawyer. So we're responsive. We provide our responses in a method and manner that is relatively understandable to the common person, as opposed to needing to be a legal scholar to understand the opinions you get.
Well, if you've tuned in for the first time, our show works like this. We get so many emails and texts from our listeners with questions, and we get so many phone calls. If you would like to ask Robert a question, you can give us a call here at 888-565-1470. If you live in an HOA or if you're in a condo association, especially if you're a board member or a management company and you have a question for Robert, this is the best time to call, especially when we first come on. We have a few open lines like we do now. We have some people who are holding, but this is the best time to call if you've got a question. 888-565-1470. I'm going to open up the show tonight with a question for Robert, and just take as long as you want. Robert, just tell people, because people have heard about legislator have put in some new laws, and I'm just going to let you go over it, and then we'll get into the gut of the show and talk about other things. So I'm just going to let you handle that right now.
Well, I'm going to assume you mean the one about condo and cooperative safety,
Yes.
which was adopted in a special session last week and signed by the governor last week. It's a fairly involved and intensive piece of legislation, over 100 pages long, which we're all still in the process of getting through it and understanding all the nuances of it. The most important aspects of it are not scheduled to commence until January of 2024. So there is the likelihood, in my own personal opinion, that the next legislative session is going to be making some changes to this, because this happened rather quickly.
Yes.
And there's a lot of, as Florida politics go, there's a lot of interests out there that haven't necessarily weighed in and been addressed that will likely need to be. There's requirements of inspections, there's requirements of adequate funding, there's requirements of regular inspections after the first inspection, there's requirements of reserve studies. All these things are going to be likely adding to the expense of living in condominiums and cooperatives in the interest of safety of the residents. Obviously, nobody wants to see a recurrence of what happened last year, although the likelihood of that has been remote all along. It's still important that they're taking these steps to ensure, as to the best of the legislature's ability, that we do have these safety protocols in place. The most important part for this year is the requirement that all condominiums and cooperatives have to notify the division of condominiums how many buildings they have, how big they are, how many residents. There's certain information that the division will have to come up with a format that's required before the end of this year. All of the condominiums and cooperatives in Florida are going to be required to submit that information so that they can compile information for their future enforcement requirements. There's going to be provisions that require local authorities, like local building departments, to maintain records of the inspection reports and the various documentation that associations are compiling. These are going to be required to be done by licensed engineers and architects. And as many people have pointed out, there's only so many of them in the state of Florida at the present time, and relative to the amount of buildings that are going to need to be addressed, that's an issue of concern. As it currently reads, the statutory timeframes, any building that is over 30 years old by July 1 of this year will be subject to having the inspections done commencing in January of 2024. And then it's generally on the 30th anniversary of their certificate of occupancy, or if they're within 3 miles of the ocean, 25th anniversary, and then every 10 years thereafter, certain requirements of inspections and reports are going to have to be filed and maintained in association records and made available to the unit owners. There's a lot of stuff there, and it's well beyond the scope of this program to get into significant detail on that. But clearly it's important to everyone in the state of Florida who's living in a condominium or
Do
a
you,
cooperative.
a real quick question? We got a board full of calls. Do you see it being modified down the road?
I expect it will be. I don't know of any specific plans at this
Right.
point. I mean, it only happened last week, but as the process tends to work in Tallahassee, there are a lot of steps involved in getting to a final version. And then once that final version happens in the next session, there's lots of tweaks and revisions that people are able to figure out in the time period from when it's adopted to the next session. So we're likely going to see a lot of that going on. And some, I see things in every section that needs to be, clearer or enhanced upon. And there's a lot of room for improvement to protect associations there.
Well, we're talking with Robert Kay. He's a senior partner at K. Bender Rimbaum, board certified attorney, Robert Kay. Let's go to the phone. We got a board full of calls. Let's start off with our buddy Barry in Miami.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Barry.
How are you doing? I want to make a comment, two comments. The first thing is, I love the program, and it's not just Robert Kay. I think K. Bender Renbaum is the best firm. I mentioned that last Thursday. But I think you're the best host. You're gracious. You're courteous. You have people who call up with their radios on, all sorts of things. And every single caller, you couldn't be more a gracious host than you are. And I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. Checks in the mail, Barry. Checks in the mail.
No, I've already told that Robert is terrific.
He is.
My comment is that these inspections, and you better get ready for this because you're not ready for this, I can tell. These inspections, they're called milestone inspections. There's reserve studies. That's never going to happen. And I don't care that there was a bill that was signed by the governor. It's never going to happen. And the reason why it's never going to happen is because what Robert alluded to is the manpower isn't there, and the manpower isn't even close to being there. So let me give you some numbers. It's called a structural integrity reserve study. There's 27,500 of them that have to be prepared by December 31st of 2024, 27,500. And the visual inspection portion of it has to be completed by a licensed architect or a licensed engineer. That's never going to happen. The other part of it is the milestone inspection, and there's 16,500 of them that have to be completed by a licensed architect or a licensed engineer by December 31st of 2024. That's never going to happen. It's not even close. And here's the reason why. And I've done a lot of work on this, and I talked to the senators who proposed the bill. I've had Zoom calls with them. Never going to happen. No way, no chance. Most of the reserve studies are prepared by either reserve study companies or engineering firms. There's 36 what are called reserve specialists in the state of Florida, 36, that's it. They work for reserve companies. They prepare the majority of the reserve studies in the state of Florida. They prepare our reserve study and many, many reserve studies. Of those 37 reserve specialists, only 5 of them are either professional engineers or registered architects. 5 of the 37. The other 31 reserve specialists are not allowed under the law to prepare the visual inspection because they're not a licensed professional engineer. There are no licensed professional architects in that group of 36. All 5 are professional engineers. And you have a lot of reserve specialists that do tons and tons of reserve studies that are well known in the state of Florida that won't even be able to prepare a reserve study. There's a fellow called Will Simons who works for Association Reserves. He heads up the Florida group. They're one of the 2 biggest reserve study companies in the country. He can't prepare it. There's another fellow, Drew Isaac, who testified before the Florida Bar Task Force Committee. He's not a licensed architect or a licensed engineer, and he can't prepare a visual inspection. So you have 5 of those. So the next group that can do it are engineering firms.
Hey, Barry.
How many? Yeah.
Barry, let me stop you there. You're hijacking our show. It's not all about this statute. I appreciate the information you're giving us, but we do have other callers. We do have other topics that we want to get to tonight. I know this is important, but we're going to have to end this part for now. But keep on,
Thanks, Barry.
keep on doing what you do.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go to Dominic in West Palm Beach. Good evening, Dominic.
Yes, my question is pertaining to...
Turn your radio down, Dominic.
Okay, thank you. Question is related to the roofs. From what I understand, part of this whole thing that went up in Tallahassee and also related to insurance companies, which is a major factor to associations. Am I understanding correctly that I need to have some form of a contract for maintenance with a reputable roofing company, which at the time when my policies are due for my building, the association, I need to present this document to them in order for me to proceed with possibilities of rewriting an insurance policy for the building.
You're asking if you're obligated by this new statute to have a roof inspection to get insurance?
Well, I've done that, but I may be misinformed that I have to have some form of a maintenance contract, which would help me the next year in order for me to even entertain with an insurance broker the possibilities of rewriting insurance for my building for that coming year.
I have not seen that in the statute at this point. I think that may be policies of various insurance companies, but I haven't heard that to be anything universal at this point.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Dominic. Let's go to Douglas in Vero Beach. Good evening, Douglas.
For the show, I'll get right to my question. We're a fairly new HOA, and we have in our declaration the very standard requirement that any material change made to the landscaping of one of our properties requires an ARC committee application be submitted. We all familiar with that. Our ARC guidelines require the submission of if the contractor is going to be used, a copy of their business license, and importantly, proof of insurance. Recently, a neighbor was complaining and asking, why do I have to do that? And I defended the policy in this manner, and I'm asking in a moment, Robert, you to react. Have I explained its basis properly? I think it's a very reasonable policy in that we're trying to protect our HOA against liability that might come from the contractor, say employee gets hurt, or if they back over God forbid, a sidewalk with a child, or maybe they injure or damage property adjacent to ours, to the home on which they're doing the work, or cut a water line. To me, as the HOA through its board approving of such an arc change, we've got some ownership in that, and we ought to protect ourselves. It seems to me a very reasonable policy, which I support. Is this an appropriate policy in your opinion, one that's advisable to have, and have I explained its basis properly? Can you add or subtract?
I believe that the way you've described it is fairly accurate, and that it is a good policy to have in place. We typically recommend to our clients that when they're dealing with contractors on common areas, that the contractors be licensed and insured, and that they also maintain a policy of workers' compensation in place as opposed to being exempt, because if the exemption protects the owner of the business, it doesn't protect the property owner, which is the association. And so if the employee is injured on the property and there's no workers' comp insurance, then the association could find itself being named in a lawsuit because of that injury, and that could affect the association's own insurance coverage or its general operating expenses. So you are correct in how you view this, and I agree with what
Robert,
you said.
Thank you. I'll not extend this too much. Just to be clear, I was describing a situation where an individual property owner was having work done on their landscape, and you understood that in your explanation. Is that correct?
I did understand that, and I would extend that to if the contractor causes damages to common areas, that
Indeed,
there be
yes.
the insurance in place, so you'll have a source of recovery. Often, contractors are corporate entities that don't have significant assets for the association to pursue without some form of insurance in place in those instances.
Yes.
So it's prudent to require that.
And I'm going to acknowledge one thing as I close out. I acknowledge that this might leave out a laborer who works during the week for a lawn care company or whatever he does, who is moonlighting on their own and coming out maybe on the weekend or after hours to do that work. It kind of leaves them out oftentimes unless they, actually organize themselves and have such protections, which might cost a little more. I see that as a possibility, but I think it's in our best interest as a community. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, and your goal is to protect the association and the members as opposed to what other workers are dealing with personally. So I don't think that's wrong of you to take that approach.
And the only last distinction is we do not require someone, a homeowner who's having, say, an electrician come in and work on their dishwasher or work on the HVAC. They're driving a pickup and could run over someone as well. And they challenged me on that, and I said, well, it seems to me that our declaration does not encompass that. We didn't all sign up for such regulation, and we don't have a right for that until we were to change it. And so there's a similar risk, but it's one that we as an HOA are not embracing when we approve an ARC requirement.
Oh,
Am I right there?
That same risk applies for any visitor to the communities, and you're right. Your documents don't contemplate that as an issue for you. So unless you change your documents, then you deal with what you have.
And that I think would be unheard of to go that far.
That would be a significant requirement, and policing it would be somewhat difficult.
Absolutely. Well, God bless you both. I appreciate this public resource and all you do, and the firm does.
Well, keep doing the good job you've been doing for your community.
Why, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, we lost all of our callers. That's okay, because we're going to break right now. If you have a question for attorney Robert Kay, you can give us a call here at 888-565-1037. 1470. If you're a board member, if you're a management company, you live at an HOA or a condo association, you have a question, give us a call here, 888-565-1470. Robert, give everybody the number at the office.
You can reach us at 800-974-0680 or send the email info@kbrlegal.com. Or go to the website, kbrlegal.com, and fill in information on the contact form on the first page.
We're going to go to break. We'll be right back with more K. Bender Rimbaum.
K. Bender Rembaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida, with offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Tampa, as well as in Miami-Dade by appointment. Several K. Bender Rembaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law, and they assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments affecting their associations. K. Bender Rembaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education, which often includes CE credit for managers and state certifications for board members. Contact K. Bender Rembaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or just write to them via email at info@kbrlegal.com.
We are back now with more of the Ask the Experts radio show, proudly sponsored by board-certified family law attorney Tina Lewert of Lewert Law LLC, covering South Florida.
And we are back. This is the Ask the Experts show. This is our 7th year, and we are so lucky to have K. Bender Rimbaum. If you were one of the people who wrote us, which there was a lot, about giving them more time on the show, we have done that. They are now on at the last Thursday of the month from 6 to 7. So you got them the first Thursday and the last Thursday. If you have a question for Robert, you can call us here at 888-565-1470. But before we go any further, what do you have going on this month?
Well, as you know, we offer various seminars and webinars. We even have a live event this month. So let's go over those now. On June the 8th, 7:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. at the Palm Beach Hilton, I believe. Oh, I'm sorry, the Palm Beach Gardens Doubletree. Let's get that place right. Live event in association with the TSK Breakfast Networking Group, Peter Mullengarden, who was on the show last week with you. And we'll be there, and there are 2 courses being addressed: asbestos, the truth, and nothing but the truth, and what every community association manager should know about mold. So asbestos and mold is the topic of 2 courses on June the 8th at 7:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. at the Palm Beach Gardens Doubletree. On June the 15th, we have a Zoom presentation hosted by the Castle Group at 12 noon to 1 o'clock. New Inspections, Reserves, and Insurance Legislation, Association Leadership, Episode 10 with Michael Bender and Jeffrey Rembaum. That one will be addressing the topics that were of most concern at the beginning of the show, the legislation that was adopted last week, both on the condo and cooperative safety aspect, as well as the insurance side. On June 21 at noon, we have a Zoom webinar legislative update hosted by the Campbell Property Management Group, featuring Michael Bender. And then on June 23rd at 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., Lisa McGill, hosted by the HOAleader.com, will be presenting service and emotional support animals, what you can and can't do when owners request them. It's a live webinar. It is fee-based, I understand, but Lisa McGill will be providing information there. All these events you can find by going to our website, kbrlegal.com, and clicking on the calendar and choose the event you want to attend. Register for the Zooms for sure, so you can get the information. Also for the live events, space is limited, so you want to reserve your space as well. And that's what's coming up in June.
Busy month. Let's go to Mike in Pennsylvania. Hi, Mike.
Long way away.
A long way away. All right. Make that other one lower. And can you hear me okay?
We hear you fine.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a condo in Florida. My wife is the treasurer of a particular condo. And the question we have is, can a family use an irrevocable trust as the owner of a condo?
Yes.
You're right. What's the question?
The question is could it be a problem?
Would that be a problem, or can that be the way they do it?
It's not a problem. It's done all the time. As far as being able to,
I'm just repeating the information.
On the board, the statutes allow for service on the board of specified individuals in the trust, so it's not something you necessarily have to think is going to eliminate her ability to be the treasurer.
So it's not a problem that the owner is
under 55?
Under 55 and has an irrevocable trust, and obviously 55 is the minimum age for the condo. So does that make it a problem?
Well, the 55-year-old requirement is for occupants, not ownership. So the unit can be owned by any aged individual. It's who occupies the unit that's important for the purpose
so the occupant has to be over 55, but the owner can be under 55, you're saying?
Right, or a trust, or a corporation, or an LLC.
Okay,
unless
so
the documents have any other restrictions, which is unlikely.
All right. Do you want to ask a question?
And then who pays the assessment? Who goes on direct debit?
Who actually pays an assessment, monthly payments for the condo? Is it the trust that does it, or is it the individual who's living there?
That's going to be up to you. Doesn't matter who pays it as long as it gets paid on time.
Okay. Anybody can pay it as long as it's paid on time. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for listening.
Mike from Pennsylvania. That's a long ways off. Let's go to Bob.
I'm in Pennsylvania, but I have the place we're talking about is Florida. Okay?
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mike. Let's go to Bob in Boynton Beach.
Hello, Bob.
I'm a first-time caller, and I have a question about budgets.
First-time caller.
Yes,
Go ahead.
In our budget, since 2020, 2021, and this 2022, the budget was passed for tree trimming and hedge trimming. And for some reason, they have not been done. And we're talking over $100,000 each year. And to me, the trees will be a liability if they're not addressed. It seems the board made a decision, now hearing about the insurances going up, that they're kind to, combine non-special projects, which to me, every year prior to 2020, every 2 years, we've had the trees trimmed. And I don't understand, are we not able to question or say, what are you doing with the money? And when it seems I'm getting a roadblock because the board feels, well, with this big insurance increase coming, well, non-essential, which to me trees should be essential are not being cut, but yet the homeowners approved of the budget to have, with our maintenance fee, part of, these trees being trimmed, and they're not being done.
Well, Bob, first of all, I don't typically see homeowners approving budget. It's usually by the board. And the purpose of a budget is to provide an estimate of what the operating expenses are going to be for that particular year, but it's not something that's written in stone. So the board has the authority to use funds within the budget for other purposes, so long as those other purposes are appropriate within the requirements of the governing documents for what the association does. And insurance is an obligation of the association. So diverting the funds budgeted for tree trimming to cover the anticipated costs of increases in insurance premiums would likely not be found to be an incorrect action by a court. There's a principle that Florida courts apply that's called the business judgment rule, in which case the court's not going to put its opinion over that of an established board of directors when the board of directors has been able to show that it acted reasonably and appropriately under the circumstances and with the advice of independent experts. So I'm going to assume that they did all these things. I'm not saying they should ignore the tree trimming, because that's also important. And as you say, there could be potential liability in the event of a storm if it's shown that the failure to trim the trees at a timely basis resulted in damage to property that otherwise wouldn't have happened, which is not a simple thing to prove. So the risk of that liability is not as great as the possibility of either not having insurance or having to have a special assessment of a significant amount that homeowners are also likely not going to be very happy with. So it's kind of a rock and a hard place situation for the board on this. It's important that they take care of the maintenance, but it isn't a legal violation to do what you've described.
Because I was under the impression, sir, that when they made the budget and they proposed it to the homeowners, and of course the 3 votes out of our 5 directors approve of the budget, and they're breaking down items, but what we're believing is like, well, if you're telling us you're going to do this, but you're not, and it seems like after the fact, they're not being done, and like I think, down the bottom line, there will be a liability, especially in Florida, if now we're getting any of these substantial hurricanes that are hitting 3 or 4, that you're going to have even more of a problem, that the trees aren't being trimmed, that you have a liability just waiting to happen. But in your opinion, they can make a budget, and they can say $200,000 for tree trimming, that they necessarily don't have to put that money toward tree trimming.
Correct.
Okay. Well, sir, thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
I just started listening to you, and you guys are just amazing. I was so overwhelmed with the information you're giving, and I've been spreading this all over my community. To put you guys on at 6 o'clock on Thursday, and if you have any questions, you guys are the man. But thank you very much for my question.
Thank you, Bob. But you can also tell everyone, if you go to our website at kbrlegal.com, you'll be able to find past shows, and you can view it at your convenience.
Well, thank you very much, sir, for the information. Keep up the great work, and thanks again for taking my call. Have a good night.
Thank you. Robert, you're going to have to stop getting your relatives to call in. I mean, this is... Anyway, this is the Ask the Expert show. We are with Robert K., Attorney Robert K., board certified, and he is here to answer your questions about HOAs, condo associations, especially if you're a board member or you're a management company. He is here to answer your questions. Our number here is 565-1470. If you would like to call in now. We're going to go through some of these emails that we've gotten. A lot of them I'm looking at. People have asked those questions tonight, except for here's one from Blake in Boca Raton. What can you use a proxy for?
Well, Blake didn't say if he's condo or HOA, and it's a little different for the two, so I'll tell you for both. In a condominium, you can use a proxy for things that do not involve the election of directors. Election of directors in condominiums has to be done by a written ballot in an absentee ballot format with an envelope inside of an envelope mailed in. For any other issues that you're going to be voting on in a condominium, you can use proxies, and for many of the issues, it's required by the statute that they be limited proxies, which is a special kind of proxy that has the specific issue already in the proxy, and the owner has indicated his or her preference or her choice as to the issue, and the proxy holder is simply delivering that. It's almost like an absentee ballot, but it is a form proxy that meets all the requirements of a proxy. HOAs are different in that they can use proxies for everything, including elections, unless their bylaws provide for a different method of electing the directors or otherwise provides limitations on the use of proxies. Condominium documents could also have limitations on the use of proxies, so you want to check that as well.
Thank you. Let's go to Jane in Hobie Sound. Hi, Jane.
We're all over the map today.
Yeah. Jane?
Yep.
You have a question
Hello,
for
Jane.
Robert?
Hi there. I have two quick questions. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Yes.
Okay, great. We are a 55-plus community, and all of our condos are all single-story. We are within 3 miles of the ocean. So this new rule that came out, how much of that really would apply to us? Because I noticed the 75 feet and all that stuff.
Well, if you're not 3 stories, then it doesn't apply to you as to those aspects of the statute.
Okay. Is there any part of that that would specifically apply to us?
At this stage, I think you still have to respond to the division and identify your building, right, the sizes, and that aspect of it. I think that from a business practices perspective, what they're requiring of associations to do makes sense if you can do it without having to, be bound by stringent time frames. Some of the counties here, Broward and Miami-Dade in particular, already have the 40-year certification requirements, which do apply to single-story buildings, and other counties are adopting that. I know Boca Raton, I think, has put it in place in Palm Beach, but it's not county-wide at this point. So that's something that you could be mindful of down the road that could come your way. The 40-year certification is similar in its inspection requirements and possible remedial measures that may be required to protect the safety of your buildings. And as I say, it would apply to your condominium.
Well, we also are 40 years old, in fact.
But you're not in Miami-Dade or Broward, so.
Right.
So right now you don't have that.
We're in Martin County.
That's not a statewide requirement at this point.
Okay, so we could just sit tight?
Yes.
And just do the letter? Okay. The other question I have is that we have quite a few people here with reverse mortgages for unbelievable amounts of money. And the banks unfortunately, some of these people have no wills, no next of kin, and so we're at the mercy of the legal system. But do we have any recourse? Would it be in our best interest that, we follow the process and we initiate the foreclosure procedure as quickly as we can, because the banks are sitting there waiting for the prices to come up so they can get the money?
Well, absolutely. If someone's not paying assessments and there's a reverse mortgage, it's really no different than a standard mortgage in the way the process works. It's just when it becomes effective. And from what I've been hearing, a large number of these reverse mortgages where the triggering event has occurred, they take a long time before they do anything about it. They still have to go through.
I've got one that's been going a year and a half now.
Without doing anything. So all the while the association's not collecting any money. So your only recourse is to pursue foreclosure of your own unpaid assessments. The likelihood is that you will take title at your own foreclosure sale, and then you'll have control of the unit, and you can either sell it or rent it for a while until the lender decides to do something, or if you can sell it for more than what's owed, then you can resolve that obligation. So that's certainly a possibility.
A good option to initiate like a short sale on it?
Well, the short sale requires involvement of the lender, so they have to be a participant of that. And the problem that we've had through the years on those is that unless you're the owner that they have their mortgage with, they are very difficult to get to talk to you. So,
right. That was the question I had.
If the owner's deceased and there is no next of kin, then it's possible that they won't talk to anybody, and eventually we'll get around to foreclosing. So that leaves other methods available to you to try and get out from under that.
Okay. Well, that was the question. It's like, can we not force the foreclosure? If we do it, can we force it? And obviously,
you won't
have to take it back to the mortgage.
You won't be forcing them. What you'll be doing is foreclosing on behalf of the association, and either someone will buy it at your sale, and you'll get all your money, and then there'll be a new owner subject to the mortgage, or the association will take title to it and own it subject to the mortgage. But you'll have control of the unit, and you can either rent it out until they decide to foreclose, or, as I say, try and negotiate something, or sell it for more than what the mortgage is and get the difference.
Well, unfortunately, the mortgages are for more than what the properties are worth. So that's why I'm sure bankers...
Even after this crazy time in the real estate market, because usually reverse mortgages are limited to like 60% of the value.
Actually, their reverse mortgages are actually for more than what the properties have been selling for.
That's very unusual.
Yeah, and they're older mortgages, so, we're sort of in a bind.
It's been subject to the market fluctuations then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Jane, thank you so much.
It's still a challenge.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
We got a text from somebody, Robert, that their first floor is storage units. And then they have a second and a third floor. Is that considered 3 floors? Do you count the storage that's on the first floor as part of the 3 levels?
It's a floor, so
okay.
You have
so it doesn't matter if there's anyone living there or not.
Right. There are places where they have a parking garage on their lower level. That's still a level. So it doesn't matter what the use is. It's a matter of whether it meets the height requirements that the statute says.
Okay, let's go. Harry from Palm Beach. He wants to know regarding recalling of board members. Is it done by a majority of the community?
Unless your documents provide for a lower number, it would be a majority of all of the voting interests in your particular community to recall any individual director. If your documents have something less than that, my opinion is that that would be what would be the controlling number. The application would be to whatever is easier for the owners on recall when there's a difference between the statute and what your documents say.
Okay. Let's go to, oh, here's a good one. Cece in Boynton wants to know, she's in an HOA. Can we change a tennis court to a pickleball court, which is the new craze? I don't know if it's new, but people are really getting into it without an owner's vote.
Well, in an HOA, you don't have the statutory limitation on material alterations that you do in condominiums. So what would be there is you'd have to look at your governing documents to see whether there's any limitation on the board making capital improvement type changes to the common areas and whether there's an owner vote required or not. So we can't really answer Cece's question without seeing the documents, but Cece can look at them. In a condominium, there is the statute that says no material alteration or substantial improvement to the common elements except as provided in the governing documents, and if the documents are silent, a 75% vote of the owners. So you still have to look at your documents in a condominium. Changing tennis to pickleball likely would meet the very minimal standards that exist with the division of condominium for what constitutes a material alteration. Like if you change the color of something, they consider that a material alteration. So I think changing the configuration of a court, it's not the same configuration for pickleball as it is for tennis, I believe, then you're going to likely be in that material alteration area in a condominium.
Okay, well, this is something I hate to do. We've come to the end of the show. Robert, give everybody your phone number and your website address.
You can reach us at 800-974-0680. Go to kbrlegal.com, or you can write us at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we've come to the end of another Ask the Expert show. But just remember, the last Thursday of this month, Kay Bender Rimbaum will be back, and I believe it's going to be Michael Bender, your partner, that will be doing the show.
I'm not so sure who it is at this point, but you'll see me in July.
Oh, okay, good. Wonderful. So, listen, we'll be back with you next week with more Ask the Experts. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in today to Ask the Experts, sponsored by board-certified family law attorney Tina Lurt of Lurt Law, LLC. Join host Steve-O again next Thursday for more interviews with the top experts in South Florida in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement on Ask the Experts.
The content